In a major ruling out of federal court, a judge ruled that the government can no longer reach out to social media and tell them what to censor. Hooray. I don't think that means that our platform on YouTube will get any easier for us anytime soon, but it does mean that the government can no longer dictate what is said. I mean, in terms of what we get punished for on YouTube, I think those things will continue. But I do still think this is a big one because it shows just how much the government has been doing it to all of us. Kind of awesome, too, that the opinion was handed down on Independence Day because the government has been taking away independence on the internet, and now they are not supposed to. The mainstream media is absolutely freaking out about this, saying that this is an activist ruling. Watch this piece on CNN where they're just beside themselves about the very notion of free speech.
Yes, this is a Trump-appointed judge, but this judge was confirmed 98-0 by the Senate. Just reading the words in this injunction, a, quote, massive effort by the defendants to suppress speech based on content. Those are the judge's words, calling the present case, quote, arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history, Ellie.
Yeah. It's a dramatic decision by this judge. If you read through it, he's citing to literature and George Washington and Ben Franklin. Here's what really is astonishing to me. This is a conservative ideology that clearly comes through in this decision. It's a conservative political ideology, right? We saw some of the quotes questioning vaccines, questioning masks, conservative talking points. But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies. And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says, you're not allowed, administration, to talk to these social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line? Who's going to police this? This is a judge trying to micromanage the day-to-day regular activities of the entire executive branch. I don't know that it's actually policeable by the judge, but it's really an astonishing. I don't mean this necessarily as a criticism. This is a very activist judicial opinion.
It's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen, and that's saying something.
It's now considered activism to go with the Constitution.
Yeah. To say that a judge can't rule in favor of free speech, that's activism. So therefore, free speech is bad, except whatever BS just came out of that person's mouth. I mean, they all looked literally beside themselves, that they're like, that the judge had actually said this is one of the most major attacks on free speech in the nation's history. And they're like, oh, what? How can he say that? Yeah, it's true. You must not have read the Twitter files out of willful refusal to do so, because we read the Twitter files and we saw that the government had been doing that, even censoring things that were true that they thought might lead to vaccine hesitancy, meaning they do not think anyone can think for themselves. And they just need to listen to what CNN tells them. The idea of micromanaging, I would like to put a pin in that because it's hilarious. I'm going to say that they probably didn't read the judge's opinion because it is full of proof of the federal government micromanaging social media. The case, the opinion, it has a lot of proof in it. It's 155 pages. And it's very heavy on Facebook, which is interesting because Twitter has come out and said, yeah, we've been doing this. Here are the Twitter files where journalists have showed us how much the federal government has been enacting censorship inside of Twitter. Facebook hasn't admitted to that. YouTube hasn't admitted to that. Pinterest hasn't admitted to that, even though we saw that they were copied on those emails from the government in the Twitter files. I want to go through the case just a little bit. Go ahead.
So if I can real quick, though, when we covered the Twitter files, I remember pointing out at that time, I was like, how is this not a First Amendment, like a total First Amendment breach? How can the government be involved in getting these companies to stifle free speech? And I was like, it just blew my mind at the time. Yeah. And so it's taken a few months, but finally somebody's come around to going, yeah, this is actually unconstitutional and the government needs to knock it off.
And there was no litigation around the Twitter files, as far as I know right now. Where this comes from is a case that has been going on since the middle of the pandemic from the two attorneys generals I think it's attorneys general from Louisiana and Missouri, in which they accused the federal government of censoring important information about the COVID pandemic. We've talked about this case a lot. This is the case where Fauci was deposed and said he doesn't even use Twitter. This is the case where Jen Psaki was supposed to be deposed, and she said she couldn't do it because she had an MSNBC show and two kids. So this is the case that's been rolling on for a long time. But you're right, the Twitter files showed us that these unconstitutional things were happening, and we didn't get litigation around it. This case has not been decided. This is not the final ruling. It's just an injunction saying this case is proven enough that this is happening and it absolutely needs to stop while we finish the case. What he ruled is that the government, including the Department of Health and Human Services and the FBI, cannot talk to social media companies for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. The judge in the case is Terry Doughty. It's the same judge who blocked the Biden administration's COVID vaccine mandate for all healthcare workers in 2021. And at the time, that only applied to 10 states. He starts out with this ruling when he quotes Friends of Voltaire from Evelyn Beatrice Hill saying, "I may disapprove of what you say, but I would defend to the death your right to say it." Yes, you have my vote already with this, because this is the essence of what we are debating. And that, you can see now people are wearing their school colors for what side they're on. Free speech, yes, or free speech, no. It literally is an absolutist argument at this point. What the left's argument hinges on is you can't let people say certain things because of consequences. And so they think that you cannot handle the consequences and you must be policed and babysat. But that is not what the Constitution says. We have all collectively agreed that our value is free speech until it's not. And while we fight it out, it still is. The judge said that the present case arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in U.S. history, just like CNN just told us. I agree with him. They find it dumbfounding. Here are the things that these two AGs in their complaints say that has been suppressed by the Biden administration. I'm just going to put it up on the screen because there are things here that I still cannot say because of the rules on YouTube. Particularly, I'm just going to tell you that I can't address number one, right, guys? I can't talk about that.
You can now. The election?
Yeah. Well, specifically
yes,
one.
You can now.
Okay.
You can now. Yeah, they reversed that one.
Okay. But number 1 and number 5 are things specifically that year's election were forbidden on YouTube. So you can read for yourself these things that, were suppressed. COVID origins, efficacy of masks and lockdowns, efficacy of vaccines, security of voting by mail. All of these things have been shown to, this is what the plaintiffs are alleging that were censored and then are further shown in this opinion and have been shown in the original complaint. Now, they are alleging it, but we saw it already on the Twitter files. You can just rewind the tape. I won't take you all the way. I considered today pulling all that stuff out. I don't feel like I need to if you went through the Twitter files. We saw it. They have been having regular meetings and direct line of communications between social media. Twitter is the only one that admitted this, but we know it happened at Google, Facebook, Pinterest, Microsoft. The case that the federal government has been threatening, the case alleges, sorry. So here's a major, I want to frame this differently. Why would social media go along with this? Not just because they're kind of all, ideologues, but because, as the case alleges, is that the federal government has been threatening social media companies that if you don't comply with our censorship, you will lose your liability protections. Here is how that is put, saying that the plaintiffs say that since 2018, federal officials, including defendants, have made public statements and demands to social media platforms in an effort to induce them to censor disfavored speech and speakers. Beyond that, plaintiffs argue that defendants have threatened adverse consequences to social media companies, such as reform of Section 230 immunity under the Communications Decency Act. Now, it goes on to say that plaintiffs also note that Mark, and then it cuts off because it's a different page, so it's hard for me to show you. But what it says there is that Mark Zuckerberg has said that this threat of antitrust enforcement is an existential threat to his platform. So they're afraid that the government will make their lives so much harder that it will put them out of business, that they do what the government says, which is coercion. The opinion, again, is very heavy on Facebook. And at some point, now I want to revisit this idea of like this CNN dude is really worried about the federal government being micromanaged by these rules. Like, when they have to comply with rules, that's micromanagement. That's basically the definition of bureaucracy. But like when there are rules, they're micromanaged. Here is one email from someone who worked from the federal government to Facebook when they had already been given explicit instructions about what to take off Facebook or what to downrank or what to, shadow ban. And when they didn't comply in the way that the government wanted, look at the email that they got in July 15th, 2021. Are you guys effing serious? I want an answer on what happened here today, and I want it today. Like, they felt that comfortable micromanaging. Who's micromanaging now? Not only telling them what to censor, telling them when to censor, telling them who to censor, telling them how much visibility could be there. But also, like, if it didn't go their way, this is your government telling them, are you effing serious? You answer to me what happened here. It also, mentions all the usual players who've been silenced or downranked or shadow banned: RFK Jr., Tucker Carlson, Alex Berenson. Same players we've been talking about on this show. The Virility Project at Stanford, White House players like Jen Psaki is heavily involved in this case. We have to remember that, again, the judge has not ruled on this, but the judge is saying that these attorneys general had made their case and they are likely to succeed. Here is his opinion, his ruling on the likeliness of them to succeed, saying that they are likely to succeed on the merits of their First Amendment claim that all of these government agencies have been doing this bad stuff. In a ruling on a motion for preliminary injunction, it's not necessary that the applicant demonstrate an absolute right to relief. Basically, like, we're almost there. They've done it. The injunction should take place now because free speech should be happening now. The government's argument against their likeliness to succeed is a little bit scary. What they said was that a ruling like this would restrict the government's right to government speech. They have a right to government speech, and it would transform government speech into government action. Ooh, does that scare you a little bit? That instead of restricting your speech, they'll restrict your action. So you can't talk about not wanting a vaccine. Instead, they'll just come in and give it to you. Like, yeah, that's a little bit of an extreme interpretation here, but like, what does government action mean? Like, if we can't do speech control, then we're going to be doing action control. Does that get anybody's spidey sense up like it does mine? Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like thinking it through, so sorry.
Yeah. I just don't like how that threat comes across. Like, you've got to let us police speech or else.
Yeah, I mean, because like I'm trying to figure out like what they mean in like government speech into government action. Like, what does that mean?
Well, let's play it out. Let's play it out. They didn't want you to say things on social media about certain elections. And so if you were saying those things and they can't stop you, they arrest you? Or...
Well,
yeah, I mean, because it's like...
And also it's like...
Government speech, like... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's like you you have they're saying that if you do these things, then it forces government action, which means now that you've said these things online, the government has to take action to go and talk to these social media companies. They have to spend money to, litigate this stuff if they need to get it offline. They need to, pay to have these platforms create a backdoor so they can get in and start policing it. So it's like they are saying, like, because you didn't keep your mouth shut about this stuff, we had to take these actions in order to use your money and create these things that we can now use to police your speech.
All right. I mean, that would be less scary than action against people who are saying speech they don't like.
Yeah, but the problem is what this decision is saying, though, is that the government can't force social media companies to censor other people. It doesn't say the government can't speak. So that's what I don't understand, like where they're getting the idea that like taking away their ability to influence what other people say is infringing on the government's speech. Like it's not. They can say whatever they want still. They just can't tell other people they can't.
Right. Yeah. Well, the judge didn't buy that argument. So that was him. That was in their argument against likeliness to succeed. And so, but I'm concerned that they think that because they can't police speech, then they'll have to move into heavier handed action. And I don't like that. Now, will they stop communicating with social media companies now? Will they, or maybe social media companies who are feeling this pressure of working with the government will say, we really can't anymore. We can't be working with you anymore. We're going to have to make our own decisions, so no more fun lunches. Yeah, but it's more.
Snowden pointed out that they were taking all of our information, the NSA and all this other stuff. Do you think they really stopped? No, they expanded. So it's like they'll secretly be like, oh yeah, nope, you caught us. We can't do that. But then it's going to be even just more secretive, and we'll just never know.
I mean, yeah, I would like to envision these Slack channels just being closed, like door closed, gone, right? These there were backdoor portals to Facebook that you needed a .gov email address, and then you could go in and tell them what you wanted to happen. All of those things should no longer exist, should have never existed, in my opinion. Will they still exist, or will they happen in a more in a way that can't be traced? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, the one legitimate point that was made on that ridiculous asinine CNN clip is, how will this be policed now? Who knows? But it should be that we can now encourage conversations where we have more curiosity about things that we were just not allowed to say. So let's celebrate the spirit of that, even if we don't know if we'll really see it in action. How about that?
Okay, deal.
Okay.
Sounds good.
You guys are not, you don't really believe.
We're not used to getting called on. We're used to interrupting. We usually just like chime in when we've got something to say. So we're not used to being called on. And I'm like, I don't know.
I'm going to move you to the front of the room. Like, you can't sit in the back.
I have a problem.
While I'm running solo.
I have a problem giving anything our government does the benefit of the doubt. I just can't do it, because we've seen the things happen so many times, and nobody ever pays for anything. Nobody ever, they just keep kicking the can down the road, and nothing ever happens. So it's just like, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on, you can't be fooled again. That thing. Yeah. Like, we just keep getting fooled, and I'm just not fooled anymore.
All right. Okay. Well, but it is fun to sort of watch people who love censorship freak out about this. So at the very least, we'll take that one.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.